All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. This is one of those quick hits episodes. I like to call them micro interviews because they're kind of a short 10-minute way for me to introduce myself and the listeners to artists who are new on the Winnipeg scene or are new to me or are doing something particularly interesting that is again it's new to me, right? So I think that the best way to start this off is if you want to introduce yourself and maybe just give a bit of background about where you're coming from musically.
Sure. So I'm Rain. I've been doing music for basically my whole life. I grew up with music because my dad is a guitar player and a singer,
Cool.
and my mom used to play the piano back in the Philippines. But I never really took it seriously until the pandemic hit. So I had a lot of free time just to write songs. And as of lately, I've just been writing new music. And I'm also preparing for an upcoming album as well for
Oh, cool.
next month. So I'm very excited for that because most of the songs that I've written for that album are very different from what I release. It's more happy, more upbeat, rather than just sad and serious.
Was the sad and serious side of things influenced by the fact that it was a pandemic project?
It was, but also I've gone through so many life experiences like heartbreaks,
Mhm.
losing a bunch of friends, and I use those emotions to convey that through song. And honestly, I think it helped me mentally because, like, throughout the pandemic, I was in a very emotional and depression state. But with music, and when I had the time to write music and release it, I felt like a bunch of emotions and weight off my shoulders has been lifted.
Okay. Now that, I mean, obviously the pandemic's not over and it probably won't be for a while, but things are easing a little bit in Manitoba in that, shows are starting to happen again. People are actually leaving the
Mhm.
house for the first time in months. What does that mean for you as someone who started this project, when everyone was locked down? Are you hoping to make it a live thing? Are you hoping to play shows and sort of get out into the wider music community now that you can?
You know what? I would love to. Right now, I'm in talks with my friend Hera. She is helping me with the release party for
Oh, cool.
the album release, and hopefully, I would love to perform again because I've actually never performed as a solo performer. It's usually in a group setting because I was in a vocal jazz group in my high school. So it would be very exciting for me, but also very nervous because I'm so used to just singing with a group. So it'd be very new experience for me just to be singing like alone in front of like a huge crowd.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. How is everything that you've recorded so far, is it all stuff you put together completely on your own because you've been doing this during the pandemic?
Yeah, so all of the songs I've released so far has been produced in my basement here. The piano tracks, all the backing tracks, and all of that. My vocals have been mixed and produced here, and actually, it's given me a learning experience as well. Because my whole life, I've had the interest of producing music or seeing what goes on behind the scenes of creating music and all that,
Yeah.
and because of that, I finally got like hands-on learning experience to produce music.
Well, I guess you had time, right? To
Yeah.
figure out how to use all the equipment. Yeah. So how does that transfer then to the, if you take this live, are you hoping to put a band together for that, or do you have an idea of how that's going to work out?
I would say it'd be cool to put together a band, but how I envisioned it is because I love performing songs acoustically. I
Okay.
just imagine myself on a stage with a piano or my ukulele, just singing.
Is that how you write? Do you write on piano? Like, what's the sort of main instrument you use when you're writing your songs?
It'll depend. Sometimes if I think this song would go perfectly with a piano, I sit down on my piano and start like putting it together, like taking out words if need be. If it's perfect for ukulele, I would go,
Right.
hey, this is good for ukulele.
What I know everyone hates answering this question, and I kind of hate asking it, but how do you define the type of music you play if you have to put a genre on it? And then the reason everyone hates answering it is because there's so many subgenres, and they have their own subgenres, and no one likes to pigeonhole themselves. But if someone you run into someone who hasn't seen you in a while, and they say, "Hey, I hear you doing music," is there sort of a quick way that you define your sound for them?
I would define it. Well, most of my music I would define as contemporary indie pop,
Okay, okay.
because
Are there artists that you would sort of point to as influences that maybe would help listeners sort of put you on the map as far as where you're coming from?
I would say my biggest influencers would be like Fozia, Ariana Grande, and John Legend and Olivia Rodrigo. So those are like my huge influences throughout my music career.
So you're very firmly in the kind of contemporary pop sort of
Yeah.
area. Okay, okay. And so what with the album you're doing, is it all going to be self-recorded and self-produced as well, or are you going to be working with other people once that's kind of officially coming out?
It's actually self-produced. I finished it back in June,
Oh, nice.
and so it's all scheduled and ready to go.
One of the things I like to ask people to, and again, this is similar to the genre question, in that I just like to sort of place people in my head as to where they're coming from. Because, over the course of doing this show, I talk to people who are between the ages of like 18 and 70, and they play every kind of music imaginable. Do you have any sort of experience, even as a listener or as someone going to shows within the local music community? Are there artists that locally that you've seen that have kind of inspired you or made you think, hey, I can do this?
W- I think the two people that actually really inspired me is she's an actress and singer-songwriter, Hera Nalum.
Okay.
She is a high school friend and she started just writing music. She released one, I believe, like Saturday. And from then on, I was like, okay, I think like I can do this. Like, if she can do it, like, she's inspired me a lot to just keep writing music. And also, she's been helping me so much with my music career as well, and I'm
Cool.
very, very thankful for that.
What has the reception been so far to your music from people people who maybe didn't know that you were, you had this pandemic album in you?
Well, uh, it's definitely like a positive feedback from what I get from people because all of my friends know me as a singer person from
Right.
like high school and college. So when they found out that I was releasing like music, they're like, "Oh my gosh, finally!"
Where does your singing voice come from? Because just talking to you now and having listened to some of your songs, you seem to have a much deeper voice as a vocalist than you do just in your natural speaking voice.
Um, I definitely come from a choir background
Okay.
because in high school I partook in so many music classes like choir, concert choir,
Yeah.
and I was basically a baritone slash bass. So I use that more for my songs because I can't really hit the high notes as a
Right. Right.
tenor.
Right.
So that's where it mainly came from. And I tend to use that more just because it is my like register that I'm comfortable with.
Okay.
And a lot of people are like, I like your deep voice. You should use it more.
Does it does it feel strange to go back and forth between the singing voice and the speaking voice? I realize they're not that much different. It's not like a drastic difference, but you're notably deeper as a singer than you are speaking.
A little bit. When I sing, I usually use like what I would say a jazz voice kind of
Sure.
like vibe. And when I speak, it's just like this, where I'm just like a little bit like higher up my range. But I would say it's not a huge transition for me. It's a little bit of tweaking, but
Okay.
that's fine with me.
Where can people hear this stuff? I mean, I know the album is in the works; it's not out yet. But the good thing about this being a podcast is someone could hear it when it comes out, or they could hear it a year from now. And by then, you might have tons more music available. So, what's the best way to sort of keep in touch with what you're doing and hear what you have out now?
A lot of my stuff can be heard on Spotify, iTunes, and all the available music streaming platforms. And if they want to look out for new music, they can follow me on Instagram at RainQC.
Awesome.